Welcome to Trade Pro. This is the release and tutorial video for the newest Trade Pro trading strategy script. This one being the 16th trading strategy script to be released on the Patreon page, along with two indicators. This one's called the Trade Pro EMA plus Divergence strategy. And if you are interested in getting access to all of these strategy scripts and two indicators, then check it out on my Patreon page. It's about $20 a month, so it's not a big financial commitment. Now let's talk about it, and I'll show all the different parts to it, all the different parameters and settings. There are a lot of different things to get through, so bear with me on this video, and you can make up your mind on if you think that it's valuable or useful to you. Now let's kind of get into this and pop up the indicators and talk about how everything works. All right, so since there are quite a few different parts of this to get through, I'm just going to start out with adding the Trade Pro Divergence indicator to my chart by itself and talking about what its role is here. So let's add that Trade Pro Divergence indicator here, and simply what it's doing is detecting divergence on the indicator that you have chosen within the settings. So default, it has the MACD being used, and default, it's going to be looking for both hidden bearish divergences, regular bearish divergences, hidden bullish divergence, and regular bullish divergence. So it's going to be signaling when it detects this thing as present. Now, as we can see, the signals tend to be pretty good. So we see a bearish signal here, we get a bullish signal here, bullish signal down here, another bearish one in this area, another bullish one down here, and bearish one up in this area. You get the point. We can go through and circle all the places where it detects divergence, and it tends to be quite accurate on average. So divergence, as a tool to help us trade is useful. So that makes this indicator quite useful to give these signals. But what we need to do is use this indicator to send these divergence signals to the strategy so that the strategy can enter positions based on these divergence signals given by this indicator. Well, before we get into doing that, let's actually go through this divergence indicator and talk about the different parts of it. I do have another video on this indicator specifically, but this has a lot of updates now, so I think it's worthy to go through and just talk about all these different parts and kind of read the little explanations for each of these so that you kind of get a full complete picture of what the options are within this settings. Okay, so let's start up top here. So first thing is the display welcome screen option, and this will put a dialog box inside of the actual indicator, which we'll see pop up here. And the most important thing I wanted to touch on with this is how with an automated divergence detection indicator, there will be somewhat of a lag depending on how you choose the settings. So with detecting a divergence, there needs to be some sort of pivot confirmation to confirm when a divergence is valid with an indicator, as it's a little bit different than detecting it with the human eye, where you can spot it in the middle of the divergence forming, and before there's any sort of confirmation, you can already see it with the naked eye. But when it comes to an indicator, you have to be able to code it to detect divergences accurately, so it does need to wait for the pivots to confirm before it can actually signal a valid divergence. So what I'll do is actually show you what that looks like on bar replay feature, so you can see what the delay looks like, and also see how you can change it so that the delay is much less based on the settings. So you can go as low as 1 bar delay to determine a divergence and confirm it and signal it with the indicator. So let's get into that. I'm just going to get rid of this display welcome screen, and then we'll go right down to the pivot look back right section, which is set to 4 at default, which means the divergence will not be signaled for 4 bars. And I'll show you what that looks like in real time by popping on to the bar replay feature and taking a look at some of these signals. So let's look at this regular bearish divergence, but we'll do it on the bar replay feature. So here it looks like it signals it at the exact top, but I'll show you when it actually signals it based on the current settings within the indicator, and then I'll show you how to make it signal the divergence much sooner. So let's start the bar replay feature. We can see the top candle gets put in and it still hasn't signaled the divergence on the indicator here. So let's continue going here and see when it actually gives that signal. So it still hasn't given the signal, and there it is. So what it's doing is signaling right here on this candle close. So this candle's opening price, that would be kind of the place where you get that divergence signal, so you could enter potentially if that's what your strategy is, and see how it plays out. But now let's take a look at what this looks like with the settings changed. So we'll keep this exactly where it is, and then we'll kind of reset the bar replay feature and change the settings so you can see how to make the signal occur much sooner. So we're going back to the same spot. Let's go into the settings of this indicator, and we're going to change the pivot look back right to 1. So we're going to have a much earlier detection and signal from this indicator. So now let's go to the bar replay feature and start it at the same place as last time, and we'll keep this risk to reward ratio tool here so we can see the comparison or how much sooner it actually signals the divergence. So let's continue now on the bar replay feature, and so there's that top candle, there's one more candle, and we get the signal, but this time on the opening of this candle right here instead. So much sooner, so quite a bit better of an entry price on this one. And as you can see, it's essentially just signaling the divergence much earlier because it's not waiting for multiple candles to confirm a pivot to confirm the divergence. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. I'll go through a couple more here on the bar replay feature so you can kind of see what's actually happening a few more times. So let's go to this next one that I circled over here. Okay, so it's going to have another divergence that's detected in here. It's going to be a hidden bearish divergence, so we'll just play the bar replay feature, and it just detected it, and it actually happened right here. So that would be where you get the actual entry signal for it, and then we can kind of play it out. And let's go through another one. So I circled the next one over here, but since I have changed the pivot detection look back, it did signal another one right here that was not being signaled before. So it does become more sensitive when you lower that look back right number. So let's take a look over here now, and we'll kind of go back a couple bars right here. See when this actually signals the regular bullish divergence. So we'll go one more, another one, and one more. So it detects it right here. So we'll put up a risk to reward ratio tool and kind of visualize it. So that was where it detected it, right here at this candle close and this candle's opening price. So that would be a potential if that's how you're trading for a trade entry. And then we can play it out, and so hopefully that makes sense. If I go into the settings and change the pivot look back right to 1, we're going to get much earlier signals than if it's at the default of 4, because it's waiting for 4 bars. Here it's only waiting for 1. So that hopefully makes sense. Now let's get through the other parts, and I'll be a bit faster on these other sections within the settings. All right, now very quickly getting through the rest of the settings because it's 9 minutes in and I haven't talked about all that much yet. So up top we have the oscillator where you can choose between MACD, RSI, check and money flow, stochastic RSI, money flow index, TCI, balance of power, CCI, and awesome oscillator. I'll just pop on the RSI there so we can see the visual representation of it, and you can choose between any of these indicators. Default is the MACD though. Now you can detect bullish divergences or detect bearish divergences. You can disable one if you only want one or the other. You can also choose to see regular and hidden divergence or just one or the other. Now the pivot detection source could be the oscillator or the price, and there is an explanation for each of these right here, but I'm just going quickly through. But don't worry, there is a more detailed explanation for each of these sections. So let's go down now. The source smoothing, where you can apply an EMA that's going to smooth the divergence signals. You have a candle pivot detection mode, where right now it's set to bodies. You can choose wicks, and we'll see maybe a signal change, or one or two of the signals might change. Let's see. Yeah, looks like it got rid of this one, added one over here, but that will change the results slightly. Then we have the pivot look back right, which essentially determines how much of a delay before a pivot confirmation. So make this number a lower number, you're going to get the divergence signal sooner. Then there's pivot look back left. The one actually won't make the signals change as far as the delay on them. And then we have the divergence max, so the max number of bars that can happen before a divergence is no longer valid. The divergence minimum length as well, so the number of bars to create a divergence has to have a minimum of 10 bars, and then the number of historical pivots to compare. So again, explanations for all of these different things, and I'm just trying to get through this quickly. We also have pivot correction. So here you can kind of have the indicator attempt to correct the pivot's position on the source opposite to what you selected in pivot detection source. So if you read through this, it'll talk about this more in depth, but essentially the rest of these things are trying to improve the accuracy of divergence. Now we do also have the ability to have early detection of divergences, and this would be closer to what you would do in real time with the naked eye, where you don't have to wait for it to confirm the divergence yet. But of course that means that the divergence might not actually work out as well as often because you're not waiting for a confirmation. So if we put on early detection of divergences, we'll see a few more signals pop up here. If we just give it a second, there we go, tons more signals on there, and I'll get rid of that now, and you can see it says early in parentheses here as well, so these are the early signals, so you should be a little bit more cautious about those early signals. Now enable line of sight filter, and then a few different parameters that you can set in here. So this says, if enabled, a divergence will only be considered valid if the pivots that make up the divergence can be connected with a line that is not crossed by any candles on the price or by any value on the oscillator. In other words, the indicator verifies that the line of sight between the points making up the divergence is clear and uninterrupted. So again, trying to make these divergences as accurate as possible as best we can using PineScript. Now we also have minimum pivot change filter, so minimum amount of price change between the pivots and also the oscillator change between the pivots. And then pivot candle color filter. This one, if enabled, a detected pivot will only be considered valid and therefore registered if it is followed by at least a certain number of red candles in case of a pivot high, or a certain number of green candles in case of a pivot low, and you can choose the specifics in here. Now you can also have a moving average filter for regular divergences, moving average filter for hidden divergences, so just a trend direction filter, such as, only take longs above 200 EMA, only take shorts below the 200 moving average. Now you can also do a divergence verification. So when enabled, the indicator will verify each detected divergence and put it in the following categories, whether it's valid or invalid based on the criteria you set here. And then now we're just getting down to the actual indicators themselves. So for the MACD, you can have it do only certain types of crosses will be valid with the MACD. So you can see a few of them disappear when I do select that. And then we have RSI and all the other indicators. With the RSI, you can say, hey, we only want that divergence to be valid if it's in the overbought or oversold territory, and you can apply the parameters that you see fit here. Now just getting through more of these indicators, MFI, TCI, balance of power, CCI, And that is the bulk of it. Now we're down to the alert section where you can create alerts with it and some visual things here. But that is going to cover the settings here. So didn't want to be too in depth because I'm already, over 10 minutes into this video, and we still need to talk about linking this to the other indicator to actually give it signals for the strategy. So let's get into the next part now. All right, so we've covered the divergence indicator. Now let's talk about the EMA plus divergence strategy. Then I'll get in and link the two together so that the divergence indicator can give divergence signals to the strategy so that it can enter trades based on divergence. So first, I have already added the strategy to the chart, and that's what you're seeing here with these big risk to reward ratio tools and the EMA here. But mind you, the strategy is not entering trades based on divergence yet because the divergence indicator is not linked to the strategy yet. Right now, it's only entering purely based on if price is above or below the 200 period exponential moving average. So it's just entering into one trade after another, just depending on where price is relative to the 200 EMA. So to fix that, we need to actually go into the strategy settings and link the TradePro divergence indicator to the strategy. And we can do that right here. So if we go enable divergence detection, we need to make sure that the divergence indicator is already on our chart at this point. Then we can go in to this drop down and select TradePro divergence indicator divergence signal. We'll hit OK, and then we have it. Now it's going to be entering trades based on the parameters you have set with the divergence indicator and the parameters which you have set in the strategy itself. So we can see price is over the 200 EMA right here. There's a hidden bullish divergence, and it enters in long, and it places the stop loss and the take profit target based on the parameters that are set within the strategy settings. Now, what we'll do is go through the strategy settings so you can see all the different customizable parts to it, such as doing the risk to reward ratio, the stop loss, take profit target, trailing stop loss, moving the stop to break even, dollar cost averaging, and a bunch of other things. So let's get into all those settings so you can see all the capabilities of this combination between the divergence indicator and the EMA plus divergence strategy. All right, so starting up top, we have the ability to enable or disable an exponential moving average trend direction filter. So essentially all this means is if you choose a 200 period EMA length, then the strategy will only take long positions when price is over the 200 EMA, and it will only take short positions when price is under the 200 EMA. So just a basic trend direction filter, and you can turn that off altogether if you wish. Now the next section is the ability to link the divergence indicator to the actual divergence strategy like we went over earlier. So just going to skip over that. And then there's the displaying of divergence lines on the actual price chart, which is nice. It's these little visual aids where it labels and then shows a line where the divergence is actually being detected instead of just showing it on the divergence indicator itself. So it's a nice visual aid so you can see what's going on. And then there's the divergence validity section as well. So if we read this, it's the number of bars a divergence is considered valid for. So how many bars should the strategy treat a divergence as still relevant following the bar in which the divergence was detected? Now, let's scroll down a little bit more, and here we have the actual entry type. So the order type, whether it be market, limit, or a stop. Now let's go down more, the ability to restrict entries to a date range, as well as a time range, as well as skip an entry if the estimated commission is greater than the estimated profit. You can enable an RSI filter and with these parameters as selected by you, and then you can skip entry if the previous trade's unrealized profit reaches a certain percent. And of course, all these do have explanations for them, so I am breezing through them. Now, to the very important section here is choosing the stop loss strategy. So the stop loss can be placed based on the ATR, can be based on a moving average of the ATR, percent based, tick based, wick based, or disabled. So you can choose all those specific parameters within here once you've chosen the type of stop loss. So right now at default, it chooses a 3 times the ATR stop loss. So that's how it's going to be placing the stop loss, how it's set currently. Now, the next section is the ability to enable a dynamic stop loss. So you can use a stop loss that moves to break even at a certain point or moves in whatever way that you want it to based on the parameters you select here. Then you can also choose the ability to trail the stop loss based on the parameters down below. And you can choose to move and trail if you want to do both. Now to the next section, we have the ability to choose your take profit strategy. So a bunch of different ways to do it, whether it be a risk multiple or an ATR based take profit, moving average of the ATR based take profit, percent based, tick based, or disabled. So let's go to our next one, where you can close the position early if the price crosses a moving average of your choice. You can close the position after a certain number of minutes, close the position on reaching the end of the trading session as determined by the parameters you select up above. And again, it all explains what each one of these things is and how to use it. Now, finally, we're almost down to the bottom here. We have the ability to enable dollar cost average entries. So if you want a multiple stage entry where it gives you a better average price and also has the potential to move the take profit target as well, then you can do that in this section if you want to enable that. There's also the ability to activate custom order size settings. So if you want to see the net profit figure if you had risked 1% of your account equity per trade, and then you do the strategy back testing, then you can see the results based on that if you want to activate custom order size settings. We also have some reading about the backtest optimization, the alert section, and then some visual stuff and what you want to actually display, but we don't need to go into all this stuff too much. All right, so that covers things for this strategy and the divergence indicator and how to link the two of them, and just all the different customizable parameters. There's just so many things and so many combinations that I couldn't even begin to start getting through a decent number of them, as it would take probably years to try all the different combinations. But that is it. If you guys are interested in getting access to the divergence indicator and the divergence strategy script, then check out the Patreon with the link in the description down below. You also get access to 15 other strategies and one other indicator. You can learn my personal trading strategy if you're a manual trader, and check it out if you're interested. So have a great day. Thank you everyone for watching.